A regular Russian family suddenly becomes superpowered after a meteor smashes into their house. What do they do next? Well, let's just say it involves a daring plan to rob a bank. Welcome back to Movie Pill. Today, we're recapping a 2016 movie titled Super Family. Spoilers ahead, and let's dive right in. On a dark night along the Russian coast, Oleg's aiding a bunch of smugglers in swiping a ton of caviar on a small boat. The sailor he's hired isn't happy, saying the boat can only handle 600 kilos. Even when Oleg offers more cash, the sailor won't budge. But Oleg's not giving up. He pretends to call his wife, but really talks to the smuggler, telling him to lie and say the cargo's only 600 kilos so the sailor will agree to take it. The trick pays off, and Oleg manages to load his ton of caviar onto the boat. But their joyride doesn't last long as the boat starts to sink along with the precious cargo. They're forced to swim to shore. When the sailor demands payment for damage to his boat, Oleg swaps his swanky new car for it, leaving the sailor with his old clunker and a big debt to the smugglers. The next day, Oleg swings by his girlfriend Sveta's bank hoping for a loan, but she turns him down because he still owes her money from a previous loan. Wanting to pitch in, Sveta suggests another idea. They could hit up her family for help since they own a house. Oleg's not thrilled about it though, because he can't stand Sveta's family and would rather steer clear of them. But with no other options, they head over to Sveta's place, where her whole quirky family lives under one roof. There's Sveta's dad, Boris, who's into singing strange tunes and hasn't stepped outside in 5 years because he's wanted. Her grandpa Pavel, who's just waiting to kick the bucket. Her sister Rita, who crunches numbers at the theater but dreams of being on stage. Her brother Tolik, who's all about joining the army but can't due to his asthma, so he's busy training dogs. And her little sister Sasha, who's always lost in thoughts of growing up and has a secret crush on Sveta's boyfriend. That's actually pretty common. Oleg tries to chat with Boris about his money issue, but he has to wait until Boris finishes his singing gig. When Boris finally hears him out, he freaks, thinking selling the house is like selling his family into slavery. Oleg tries to explain that nobody will lose out, he just needs a guarantor's letter, but Boris still shuts it down with a firm no. Out of the blue, their squabble gets interrupted by a meteorite crashing through the roof and smacking Pavel. They all rush outside, thinking they're being attacked. But when they see the meteor shower, they figure out what's up and head back in to check on Grandpa. After getting him settled, Oleg and the siblings decide to dig out the meteorite to sell it. But one by one, they conk out, leaving Oleg to dig solo. He doesn't finish until morning, and when he climbs out of the hole, Pavel calls him from bed to say he's about to kick the bucket. Oleg wants to call an ambulance, but Pavel won't have it. He's had enough and just wants to go peacefully. Before he passes away, he leaves Oleg with a final message for his family. They can all go to hell. Not a very nice thing to say as your last words, I would say. After making sure Pavel's really gone, Oleg hurries to Sveta to tell her, but she's out cold and won't wake up. Oleg ends up crashing next to her and dozing off. When Tolik later wakes him up to show him something, Sveta's disappeared. Oleg follows Tolik to the living room and finds the meteorite has turned into some bizarre liquid. Sasha's gained super strength and Rita can fly. A moment later, Sveta appears with half her body gone invisible, and out of nowhere, Pavel joins them, alive and kicking. But things take a turn when Rita can't handle her newfound flying skills and zooms off through the hole in the roof, only to crash down to the ground. Pavel ends up kicking the bucket again as Sveta becomes fully visible once more. After getting Rita back inside and securing her so she won't float off again, Pavel wakes up. They figure out that the meteorite gave them superpowers. Sveta wants to call the cops, but as soon as she steps out, Pavel bites the dust again and Rita stops floating. Turns out, their powers only work when they're all together. They visit a doctor to get some answers, but he says they're fit as a fiddle and can't find anything wrong with them. Talk about keeping the whole family always together. That's really wholesome. The funky thing that happens when they separate seems to be a side effect of their powers. Later, over dinner, they chat about what to do with these new abilities. Rita is keen on performing, but Pavel's concerned about people messing with them, while Tolik hangs out with his dogs and discovers he can understand them now. Oleg suggests that the family hit the TV circuit to make some cash, but Boris nixes the idea. When bedtime rolls around, Oleg asks Sveta about their bank savings, while she wonders if their future kids will be invisible. The next morning, Pavel tries to hang himself, but it doesn't work. He can't die as long as he's with his family. Boris discovers he can teleport when he accidentally jumps to the bathroom during a bathroom break. He figures the family needs a break to sort things out. They head to a lake for some fishing. While Boris practices his teleporting skills, Oleg pitches his plan. plan. They should all join forces and rob a bank. Since Sveta's invisible, she can just walk into the bank, snatch the money, and stroll out while we wait in the car to make sure she doesn't lose her mojo. Rita, Tolik, and Sasha are all on board, but Boris keeps shooting down the idea, saying he doesn't care if Oleg walks out and they lose their powers. Fed up, Oleg storms off to the car, and Sveta follows suit after telling the family to hide Pavel's body in the basement until they get back. Maybe it's not a good idea to split up like that, given that someone from your family dies every time someone walks away. As they're driving, Oleg tries to convince Sveta that his plan is solid, but they're suddenly flagged down by another car. It's the smugglers, demanding their cash. Oleg suggests that he can cough up the dough in a month, but they're having none of it. They demand payment within a week, or threaten to sell his organs on the Chinese black market. Sveta finally gets it. Oleg's debt isn't just about money, it's putting his life at risk, so she reluctantly agrees to help him out. The next day, the couple drags Boris to see this amazing new house they could buy if they go along with the plan. Boris isn't sold on the idea of moving, but Sveta finally stands her ground. She tells him the family is sick of the old dump they live in and they'll go anywhere as long as it has a working toilet. Boris keeps resisting, but when Sveta starts crying and reminds him it's the first time she's asked for his help, and he's not listening to his own daughter, Boris finally gives in and agrees to rob the bank. After sorting out the plan details, the family throws a little party to toast to their future, but Sasha keeps crashing Oleg and Sveta's alone time. The next morning, she even dulls up to impress him. Oleg is surprised when suddenly, everyone starts laying down their conditions for helping out. Pavel wants a cremation after the job, Rita wants to show off her flying in front of people, and Sasha wants a date with Oleg. Those are some very wild conditions if you ask me. Oleg feels that they're asking too much and initially refuses to pitch in, but Boris gives him a stern talking to, saying if he wants to be part of the family, he needs to step up or the deal's off. Reluctantly, Oleg agrees to fulfill everyone's wishes. Later, after sorting out Rita's theater show, Oleg finally discovers his power while chilling in bed with Sveta. He can shoot water from his finger. Sveta jokes that it'll be handy for watering the plants. The next morning, Sasha tags along with the couple as they scope out the bank they plan to hit. Luckily, it's not where she works, so they can avoid suspicion. While they're chatting about the heist details, Sasha casually asks what would happen if Sveta got caught and landed in jail, wondering who would take care of Oleg. Sveta plays along and jokes that she's got it covered. When they get back home, they find out Tolik has shaved his head because he's finally been accepted into the army. That means he won't be around to help with the bank job. Boris is bummed about losing his son, but Oleg's focused on the plan. So he pulls some strings with his contacts in the army to convince them to tell Tolik it was all a mistake. Tolik is understandably mad and upset, but Boris is over the moon, claiming the army finally saw the light. Oleg comforts Tolik, promising to sort things out after they rob the bank. This gesture earns Tolik's trust, and they share a hug. Then they head to a funeral home to arrange Pavel's cremation. It's a good thing that Pavel will get what he wants after the job is done. The staff hands them a note for Pavel to stick on his chest, so if the cops find him dead, they'll know where to take him. Later, Oleg takes Sasha out for a fancy lunch while the family keeps an eye on them from a distance. Sveta sits invisibly beside them to watch over her sister. Sasha starts hinting that she wants to come with Oleg after the heist because she's sick of her family. But before Oleg can say anything, the smugglers, who are also dining there, barge in. They get up close to grill Oleg, and when Sasha realizes their bad news, she stands up and doesn't hesitate to take them down. The entire family takes off to steer clear of trouble, which causes Sasha to lose her super strength and eventually ditches the smugglers too. Later, they spend the night listening to Tolik's dog crooning the national anthem. The next day, it's time to roll. Oleg parks the car across the street in the sun because the shady alley Boris points to has no parking sign. Since Sveta can only make her body invisible but not her clothes, she strips down before sneaking into the bank with Oleg. She sticks close to the employees, trying to remember all the passwords and safe codes, while Oleg snaps a pic of the floor plan in case they need to skedaddle. Meanwhile, Boris, sick of the sun, decides to shift the car to a nearby alley for some shade and fresh air. But the plan hits a snag when they realize it's reserved for the bank's armored truck. When one of the trucks rolls up, they're told to scram. You have to watch where you park, especially if you plan on robbing a bank. Boris refuses because it would make Sveta visible, so with no other choice, the guards use their truck to shove the car away. Sveta suddenly pops into view in front of an employee and a stunned client. In a panic, the family calls Oleg, who rushes out and helps them drag Pavel's body to the front of the bank to be closer to Sveta. Once she's near the family, Sveta instantly gets her powers back and disappears, leaving the two guys who just saw her totally baffled, thinking they must be hallucinating. The family gets ready to split, but gets stopped by the police, who just want to check up on them. But Boris, convinced he's a wanted man, teleports away, ending up inside the cop's truck by accident and getting arrested. Hours later, Oleg manages to get him out, but it costs costs them another car. When they get back home, Oleg sets the record straight, revealing Boris isn't wanted at all. It was all in his head. Furious, he lays into everyone for their antics and makes them swear they'll stop arguing and abusing their powers. The next day rolls around and they still have to take Rita to the theater as part of the deal. But when it's her turn to perform, she freaks out seeing the big crowd, including folk she knows, and gets major stage fright. Rita jets out of there, refusing to perform anymore. Oleg goes after her, but he runs into the smugglers, who snatch him up and toss him onto the stage, turning him into their punching bag for the day. When they finally let him go, Oleg is fuming. He lays into the whole family, calling them lazy, self-centered fools who waste amazing tech on pointless stuff. Oleg is really done with his family. Who wouldn't after that beating? Oleg tries to ditch them, wanting out, but Boris comes up with a crazy idea and decides to kidnap him. When night falls, the family heads back to the bank, all set for the heist, while Pavel keeps some drunk guys entertained by spitting fire after downing some fuel. The rest of the gang don masks and gears up to get busy. Sasha pushes a truck to block the street, hiding their moves, then pulls a chain Rita rigged up on the window, making a hole in the wall. Boris teleports inside and Sasha tosses Sveta into the hole before Rita swoops in and flies her there with the rest of the group. Sveta puts her newfound codes to work, shutting down the alarm while Sasha casually lifts the safe and chucks it into the street, with the family hustling to grab the cash and load it into the car. The cops roll in, but Tolik keeps them occupied by sending the dogs after them. Tolik really saved the day. I'd say his family owes him big time. After grabbing all the cash they could, they make a run for it, grabbing Pavel as he leaves a trail of fire behind. By the time they've put some distance between them and the bank, the sun's up, and they take a moment to celebrate. But Pavel reminds them of the final part of their deal. He wants to be left behind to meet his end. After saying their goodbyes, the family drives off, but they're heartbroken when they see Pavel's body collapse, prompting them to rush back and help him. Pavel refuses to back down and yells at them, insisting this is what he wants. Boris chimes in, suggesting they all stick together as one big happy family, but Oleg steps in, pointing out that they can't stick around because their heist didn't exactly go smoothly, and the cops will catch up with them sooner or later. Plus, he and Sveta already had plans to head to Thailand. Tolik's off to Moscow, and Sasha and Rita are itching to go to Brazil. The girls want Boris to tag along, but before he can respond, Pavel drops a bombshell. He's called the cops to come find his soon-to-be dead body. With that, the family hits the road for good this time. While the rest of the family was indecisive, Pavel knows what he wants. He just wants to die peacefully. Seeing her grandfather pass away really hits Sveta hard. When Oleg starts splitting up the cash later on, she refuses to touch it, saying they should give it back. But Oleg won't hear of it. Fed up, Sveta kicks him out of the car, saying she's done with him. Seeing that the family hasn't changed, Oleg decides to go his own way. He sorts out his business, pays off the smugglers, and stashes the rest of the money by taping it to his upper body under his clothes. As he's about to jet off from the airport, he catches wind on the news that the family got busted trying to get Pavel's body back from the funeral home. At first, he tries to ignore it, but once he's on board the plane, the guilt hits hard. Unable to shake it off, he decides to turn back and head back to town to help out. First stop, the funeral home, where he tries to grease the wheels and get Pavel's body back. Just let the man enjoy his eternal peace. He deserved it. Since there's a mob desperate to get Pavel, the guy demands a cool $1 million and won't settle for anything else, no matter how much Oleg tries to bargain. Left with no choice, Oleg forks over every penny he has left and grabs Pavel, dragging him along to the courthouse where the family's on trial. As soon as they walk in, all hell breaks loose. Everyone regains their powers. Chaos ensues. Boris teleports out of the cage and teams up with Pavel to throw some punches, while Sasha breaks open the cage to free her siblings. They team up and knock out a bunch of officers while everyone else bolts. Once they're all back together, Boris admits that Oleg's officially part of the family with this crazy plan. Outside, a bunch of armed cops are waiting, but Rita swoops in and distracts them by flying above, pretending to be some kind of religious vision. Thanks to Rita's distraction, they manage to snatch a car and run, but it doesn't take long for the cops to snap out of it and give chase through the city. Boris hops into one of the police cars and takes control, while Sasha uses her super strength to push the others aside. When they accidentally plow through a vegetable stand and the mirror gets all dirty, Oleg steps in and cleans it with a stream of water from his finger. It's madness all around the city, with cops chasing and chaos everywhere. Sasha flexes her muscles again, steering the car into a sudden turn, causing the police cars to crash into each other, except for one. They finally shake off the last pursuer when Rita rises up, lifting the car into the air with her flying powers. Later, the family meets up with the smugglers and pays them to hide them in one of their containers for a secret trip to Thailand. Now, they've got 20 days ahead and nothing but each other for company. What a wild ride with Oleg and his super family. From smuggling caviar to discovering superpowers, their adventures have been nothing short of extraordinary. I rate this movie 5.5 out of 10. Comment down below what you would rate it. Looks like this movie pill is starting to wear off. But don't worry, there's always more where that came from. Tap here to keep the effects going with this next movie, because who can stop at just one? And while you're at it, don't forget to like and subscribe, because your next movie dose is just a click away.